Welcome back to our Fibrify Design Suite tutorial. In the last video, we had a look at the part import and part preparation. And in today's video, we will actually start with the creation of our first fiber layup together. So as you can see here, in the last video, we have created the print bed, which we don't need anymore. So we can go ahead and just hide the print bed solid, and we can directly move on and have a look at our first fiber tool, which is the fiber line follower up here in the fiber category. So just click on the fiber line follower. For each tool that we have, there will be an options menu opening here in the center of our left screen side here with all the options for the selected tool. Also, at the top left corner of our design window, there will always be a short text basically telling you how to use the tool. So for our fiber line follower, the first thing we are told is to click to select a curve edge as an input. So let's just go ahead and do so. We can just select an edge, and as you can see here, the edge that we have been selected is highlighted in that green color. When we have a look into the options menu, we see that this is an input curve, meaning that these fibers are basically the reference for our fiber creation. As you can see as well, we have a second green line visible here, which is actually the preview of the fiber that we would create. And as you can see, this fiber here, this preview is placed on the bottom, so on the XY plane. Again, when we look into the options menu at the bottom, we have the options here called Z positioning, meaning that we can place the fibers that we want to create on a specific C position. The default settings are always set as we see here. So the fibers will be created on the same layer relative to an absolute value, which is set to 0, meaning that the fibers by default will be created at the first layer of our part. We can make changes here. For example, we could also have a Z position relative to a layer number. Again, the default value here is 0, meaning that these fibers will be created on the first layer for us. As you can see, when I change this value here, let's say to 10, so the Z position of our fibers should be on the 10th layer. We can see here that this is automatically adapted. This can help with the distribution or vertical distribution process later to have individual fibers be placed on different Z positions. More to that in the next video when we're actually going to talk about the vertical distribution. For this video, we will just keep the default values set to 0 and don't worry about this anymore. So when we actually have a look normal to our part onto the print bed, we can see that our input curve is actually has actually two arrows indicating the start and the end of the fiber prefab that will be created, giving it a certain direction. And when we look again into the options menu, we have the option base positioning, which is set on left, meaning that the fiber that will be created in that sense of that direction that we see here is placed on the left. Also, this means that the right edge of the fiber is in contact with the selected input curve in this case here. So for us today, since we want to place the fibers within our model geometry, we have to change the base positioning to right. And when we want to increase the number of fibers, we can see here that the distribution is still set to left, so the fibers will be distributed to the left in the direction that we see here. So we have to make the changes also to the distribution and have them distributed to the right. By holding down the left control key, we can select multiple input curves. So in our case here, let's go ahead and select the whole parameter of our part to create our first prefab, which should be a parameter reinforcement of our part. Before we create these fibers, I want to show you one more feature in the options menu. By within the base positioning drop-down menu, there is also a custom option, and here we can actually put in a value greater or smaller than 0.5 millimeters. So in our case, let's put in 1 millimeter. And as you can see here, these fibers have moved inwards by 0.5 millimeters, creating a boundary layer of plastic for our first prefab here. This would also be all the options that we have a look at now, and our first prefab is all set. So by clicking on the green check mark here, or by just pressing the enter key on your keyboard, we can actually create these fibers. So by doing so, we get the information fiber solids have been updated. By clicking on or by pressing escape, we can cancel the current selection. By pressing S, we can leave the tool that we are currently in. And by turning our part, or by simply hiding the plastic body, we can have a look at our fiber solids that we have created. When we look into the structure tree, there is also a new component which is called line follower 1, and by opening it we can see that it contains all the physical and construction fibers needed for this prefab. Okay, so let's continue with our second prefab. So show the plastic body again. And now for this second prefab that we want to create, we use the band generator. So open the band generator, and how this one works is by holding down Control, we can select two circles as an input, as input curves. So let's select these two circles here. And as you can see now, again, when we have a look right onto the print bed, we can see that now we have different type of options on how to connect these two circles. So let's have a look at a couple of these. So we have a simple double circle, not connecting them at all, but reinforcing each individually. We have, for example, a figure of 69, which would like this. Basically, we have all the different options possible connecting these two circles by their tangent connection lines. For this tutorial, we will choose the convex hull, so simply creating a surrounding band around both of these circles. We will increase the number of fibers up to 4, and then basically this is already it. We can go ahead and create these fibers as well. Again, by pressing escape, we can cancel the current selection. By pressing S, we can leave the tool that we are currently in. And again, let's have a quick look, hide the plastic body. We now have a second component in our structure tree, the surrounding band 1, which you can see here. So now when we show the plastic body again, you can see when we have a look from the bottom, we now have a nice reinforcement of the parameter. We have somehow connected these two holes. So in a third step, it would be nice to place some fibers in between these holes. But at the moment, we don't really have a nice edge of our part to select to create these fibers. So what is always an option is to use the built-in space claim sketching tools to create 2D geometry, which we can then use as reference to create fibers. To do so, in a first step, we will have to create a sketch plane, which is in the build object category here on the far left. So click on that. And again, here we have the option to just enter an absolute Z position where the sketch plane is created. In our case, the Z position 0 is fine, since we also don't have a change in cross-section along the Z position. So just leave the default value here as well and create this sketch plane. Space claim automatically switches to a section view of our part in that intersected with our sketch plane that we've just created. We can then go into the design tab of space claim and actually go into the sketching mode. The sketch plane still is selected. With a right click here, we can check and see that the sketch plane is actually active as a curve container, meaning that everything that we will draw from now on is stored within the sketch plane and can then be used to create fibers in a second step. So to show you this feature, we will just draw a simple line. So select the line tool of space claim. By hovering over these circles here, space claim shows you the center points. So we will just go ahead and connect these. Again, pressing escape cancels the selection. Pressing S leaves the tool. We can directly go back to our Fibrify design suite, open the fiber line follower again, and by selecting the line that we've just drawn, you can see that we can use it now to create a third prefab. For this one, we will make changes to the options as follows. So we want to create 13 fibers for this one. We want to have the base position set to middle and the distribution should be split. So as you can see here, we have our fiber prefab nicely centered in the middle in between these holes. When we go now ahead and create these fibers, you can see that we are sticking out of our model geometry. So when we go into 3D mode again, by pressing D, for example, on your keyboard, we can see, as I just said, these fibers are just a little bit too long. So we have to actually go back and make some changes. And to do so, what you can do is, as long as the fiber line follower tool is still selected, we can select an already created line follower. In our case, the line follower 2, for example. The options we see now here are the ones that were used to create this line follower. And when we look again into the left top corner of our design window, we now have two options. The green check mark meaning that we can create a new prefab based on these options, and the floppy disk or save icon means that we can actually edit these options here and update the already existing line follower. And this is what we will do now. So next to the input curves that we can select, which will be highlighted in green, we also have these cutting curves which can be selected. When we look again into the small message up here, left Alt plus click to select a cutting curve. So as we are told just hold down the left Alt key and we can then select a curve on which we want to cut our fibers. So in our case here, let's start with that left circle. Select it. As you can see, by holding down Alt, this curve will be highlighted in a dark blue color. We can then make a small adjustment to the options. Here we have the option delete ends. We now want to delete the start of our prefab. So select this one and then not creating a new prefab, but updating the existing one. We can directly see the changes here. Also, by holding down the left Alt key and Control together, we can select multiple cutting curves. So again, let's select the second circle here, go back into the options menu, and now change the delete ends options to both. We can also implement a cutting gap of, let's say, 0.5 millimeters, update the changes, and as you can see now, we have now cut our prefab on both of our cutting curves with a cutting gap of these 0.5 millimeters. Perfect. So again, press Escape to cancel the selection and S to leave the tool that we are currently in. Let's go ahead and hide the plastic body to have a better look at the prefabs that we've created. And as you can see now, this looks quite good already, and this is actually also our first layup that we wanted to create, consisting of our 3 different prefabs. To keep everything nice and with a nice overview, we can actually use a tool called Group Prefab to group, as the tool already says, to group these 3 prefabs. So when selected, again hold Control, select the line follower 1, the surrounding band 1, and the line follower 2. Create the group prefab, again S will leave the tool. We can hide all of our single prefabs, and we can see now our group prefab 1, when we show and hide it, now consists of these 3 prefabs. We can also, with a right click, rename this group prefab and call it Layup 1 to keep everything nice and organized. This will come in handy later when we actually have a look at the vertical distribution. So this is the end of this video. We've created our first layup. In the next video, we will create our second layup together, and we will have a look at the vertical distribution. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.